On the coldest night of winter, a homeless man named David risked his own life to save a stranger stuck in a snowstorm. What he never imagined was that the woman he helped was a billionaire, waiting with a life-changing gift that would transform his world forever. Before we begin, I want you to drop in the comments where you're watching this story from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next upload. The night sky was painted black, with only the dim glow of street lamps reflecting against the thick sheets of falling snow. The storm had arrived earlier than expected, swallowing the city in a heavy white silence. Most people hurried home, wrapping themselves in warmth, shutting their doors tight against the bitter wind. But for David Carter, there was no home to retreat to. At 42 years old, he had grown used to the streets, their harshness, their cruelty, their indifference. Once, he had been a construction worker, with steady pay and pride in his hands. But life had a way of unraveling. One injury, one missed paycheck, one tragedy, and suddenly the ground beneath him was gone. David walked the frozen sidewalks with his coat pulled tight, his breath fogging in front of him. His shoes, cracked at the soles, let in water that froze his toes numb. Still, he pushed forward, searching for a sheltered alley or doorway where he could ride out the storm. As he turned onto a quieter street, the sound of spinning tires cut through the wind. A black luxury SUV sat stuck in a snowdrift, its headlights glowing desperately against the blizzard. Inside, a woman was pounding at the steering wheel, her hair falling across her face as she muttered something David couldn't hear. David hesitated. He could just keep walking. It wasn't his problem. But something in him, a part of him that refused to die even after all life had taken, urged him closer. He trudged through the snow until he reached the car. Through the fogged glass, he saw her clearly, a woman in her mid-30s, elegant even in distress, her diamond earrings catching the faint glow of the dashboard light. David raised his hand, knocking on the window. She jumped, startled, then rolled it down just enough to speak. "Are you okay, ma'am?" David asked, his voice hoarse from the cold. "I'm stuck," she admitted, her tone clipped with frustration. "The tires won't move. My phone died. I don't know what to do." David glanced around. The storm wasn't letting up. If she stayed here, she could freeze. Without thinking of who she was or the kind of world she came from, he nodded. "Don't worry. I'll help you." And with those words, David, a homeless man with nothing left to his name, stepped into the storm to save a stranger, unaware that she was not just anyone, but a billionaire whose life-changing gift would alter his fate forever. David crouched beside the SUV, brushing away snow with his bare, calloused hands. The storm bit into his skin like needles, but he kept moving. Years on the streets had taught him one thing: if you stop moving in the cold, you die. "Try turning the wheel slightly left," he shouted above the wind. The woman gripped the steering wheel, her fingers trembling despite her leather gloves. The tires spun, spraying icy slush. The car groaned but didn't budge. David pressed his shoulder against the rear bumper. He pushed with every ounce of strength left in his frozen muscles. For a moment, the car rocked but stayed trapped. His chest burned, but he refused to quit. "Again!" he yelled. The engine roared, the tires caught, and with a sudden lurch, the SUV rolled free from the snowbank. David stumbled forward, collapsing onto his knees, gasping for breath. The driver leapt out, rushing toward him. Her fur-lined coat swung open, revealing a silk blouse underneath, clothing far too fine for a snowstorm. She knelt beside him, her perfume faint but noticeable, a scent that felt out of place in the frozen night. You helped me," she said, her voice softer now, gratitude breaking through her earlier frustration. David managed a tired smile. Couldn't just leave you there, ma'am." She studied him, really seeing him for the first time. His torn coat, his ragged shoes, the frost clinging to his beard. A man who clearly had nothing, yet had risked himself to help her. "Please," she said, her hand brushing his arm. "Get in the car. You'll freeze out here." David shook his head. "No, it's fine. I'll be okay." But his body betrayed him, the violent shiver running through him, the way his lips had turned pale blue. He wasn't okay, and they both knew it. "Enough," she said firmly. "You saved me. The least I can do is keep you alive tonight. Get in the car." Something in her tone left no room for argument. David hesitated, then slowly stood, his legs stiff, and followed her to the passenger side. He climbed in, the warmth of the heater wrapping around him like a blanket he hadn't felt in years. His eyes closed for a brief moment, a sigh of relief escaping him. The woman glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I'm Evelyn," she said at last. "Evelyn Moore." David nodded, rubbing his hands together. "David Carter." Neither of them could have guessed in that moment that this meeting, in the middle of a snowstorm, on an empty street, would alter the course of both their lives forever. The SUV crawled through the storm, its tires crunching over ice as Evelyn steered carefully. Inside, the heater hummed, slowly thawing the chill from David's bones. He held his hands over the vents, feeling life creep back into his fingertips. Silence lingered between them for a while, broken only by the wipers scraping against the windshield. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" David's jaw tightened. He wasn't ashamed of who he was anymore. It took too much energy to hide it. But saying it aloud always stung. "No. I'll find somewhere," he muttered. Evelyn frowned. "Not in this storm, you won't. People freeze to death in weather like this." David gave a small, sad chuckle. "Wouldn't be the first time I thought I might." Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She studied him from the corner of her eye. A man who looked worn, broken, yet carried a strange resilience in his voice. "I won't let that happen," she said firmly. "You're coming with me. I have a cabin not far from here. We'll wait out the storm there." David turned his head sharply. "Look, ma'am, I don't want to be a burden. You don't even know me." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I know enough. You helped me when you didn't have to. That tells me more about you than most people I meet." David sat back, unsure how to respond. He had been invisible for so long. People passed him on sidewalks without a glance, restaurants turned him away, strangers avoided his eyes. Yet here was this woman, elegant and refined, insisting he come with her. Within half an hour, the SUV turned off the main road and wound up a narrow lane flanked by pine trees heavy with snow. At the top stood a cabin, modern yet rustic, glowing warmly against the white night. Evelyn parked and led him inside. The scent of cedar and cinnamon filled the air. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and soft rugs covered the polished wooden floors. For David, it felt like stepping into another world. "Sit," Evelyn said gently. "You need warmth." He obeyed, sinking into a leather armchair near the fire. The heat seeped into his frozen limbs, almost bringing tears to his eyes. Evelyn disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a steaming mug. "Hot cocoa. It'll help." David wrapped his hands around the cup, savoring its warmth before taking a sip. The sweetness spread through him like hope itself. "You didn't have to do this," he said softly. "I wanted to," Evelyn replied. "And besides, something tells me tonight was meant to happen." David looked at her, puzzled, but said nothing. He didn't yet know who she truly was, or how profoundly his life was about to change. The fire snapped and hissed as snow piled up outside, burying the cabin in white silence. David leaned forward, holding the warm mug between his hands, letting the heat seep into his bones. Evelyn sat across from him, her posture graceful yet relaxed, a curious softness in her eyes. For the first time all night, there was no rush, no storm to fight, no danger to run from. Just two people, strangers by circumstance, sharing the same quiet room. Evelyn broke the silence first. "So, David, how long have you been out there? On the streets, I mean." David's shoulders tensed. He didn't usually talk about it. People rarely asked, and when they did, it was often with judgment, not compassion. But something in her voice invited honesty. "Almost 5 years now," he said at last. "I had a good job once, construction. Loved working with my hands. But after an accident on site, my back was never the same. Couldn't keep up with the work. Bills piled up, rent went unpaid. Before I knew it, I was out." Evelyn's expression softened, sadness flickering in her eyes. "And no one helped?" David gave a humorless laugh. "People tried, in little ways. A meal here, a blanket there. But nobody wants to take in a man with nothing. Pride didn't help either. I kept telling myself I'd bounce back. That tomorrow I'd find work. But tomorrow kept slipping away." Evelyn leaned back, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug. She hesitated before speaking. "You know, I lost someone once. My husband." David looked up, surprised. She hadn't mentioned being married. "He passed 3 years ago," Evelyn continued, her voice steady but laced with pain. "He was my partner in everything. Life, business, dreams. After he died, I buried myself in work. Built walls so high I forgot what it meant to connect. To really see people." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, filled only by the crackle of the fire. Two lives broken in different ways, yet somehow colliding in this strange night. David cleared his throat. "I'm sorry. Loss like that, it doesn't just heal." Evelyn nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't. But maybe it changes shape. Maybe people cross our paths to remind us of that." Their eyes met, and for the first time, David noticed how kind hers were beneath the polish and wealth. She wasn't just some stranger in a fur coat. She was a woman who had her own scars, hidden behind layers of strength and status. He smiled faintly. "Guess fate knew we both needed a little saving tonight." Evelyn's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Maybe so." The storm howled outside, but inside the cabin, something warmer was taking root, an unspoken bond, fragile yet undeniable, between a man with nothing and a woman with everything. David stared at Evelyn, trying to process her words. His first instinct was suspicion. People didn't just hand out kindness without a price. On the streets, every offer came with strings attached. But her eyes were calm, steady, and for the first time in years, he felt no judgment in them. "What do you mean, your turn?" he asked cautiously. Evelyn leaned back, folding her hands in her lap. "You've lived without stability for too long. I can't change the past for you, David, but I can give you a chance at a future." David frowned, shaking his head. "Look, I don't need charity. I'm not some project you can fix just to feel better about yourself." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "I didn't say charity. I said a chance. There's a difference." He looked at her skeptically. "And what exactly are you offering?" Evelyn rose from her chair and walked toward a drawer in the cabinet. From it, she pulled a thick envelope and placed it on the table in front of him. The flap was unsealed, the paper crisp. David hesitated before opening it. Inside was a stack of bills, more money than he had seen in years. His throat tightened. He pushed it back toward her quickly. "No," he said firmly. "I won't take this. I can't." Evelyn didn't move the envelope. "That's just to help you get back on your feet. A warm coat, good boots, a safe place to sleep for now. But that's not the real gift I'm talking about." David blinked. "Then what is?" Evelyn sat again, her voice quiet but filled with certainty. "A job. A place in my company. I've been searching for someone I can trust, someone who understands struggle, someone with grit. And last night, in the middle of a storm, I found him." David froze, his heart thundering. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "A job? From her? You don't even know me," he stammered. Evelyn leaned forward. "I know enough. You didn't hesitate to risk yourself for a stranger. You showed me kindness when you had nothing to gain. That's the kind of person I want by my side. Everything else, skills, training, we can teach. But character, you either have it or you don't. And you do, David." For the first time in years, David felt something stir inside him, something dangerously close to hope. He wanted to believe her, but part of him still whispered, "This can't be real. People like you don't get second chances." He looked down at his rough hands, then back at her. "Why me? Out of all the people you could choose, why me?" Evelyn's gaze softened. "Because, David, sometimes the universe brings the right souls together in the most unexpected ways. Last night, you saved me. Today, I'm offering you a new life." The fire popped in the hearth, echoing the unspoken truth between them. This was the turning point. David sat motionless, staring at the envelope on the table. The fire's glow flickered across his face, highlighting the storm raging inside him. 4 years, he had survived by expecting nothing, by lowering his hopes so he wouldn't feel the crushing disappointment of failure. Now, Evelyn was offering him not just money, but something more dangerous, hope. His hands trembled as he finally spoke. "You don't understand. I've failed before. I had a job. I had a home. I had people counting on me. And I lost it all. What if I take this chance, and it all falls apart again?" Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "Failure doesn't define you, David. It only teaches you. What defines you is how you rise after the fall." David let out a shaky laugh. "Easy for you to say. You're a billionaire. You'll never know what it's like to sleep on frozen concrete, praying the cops don't shove you along at 2 a.m. Her eyes softened. "You're wrong. I may not have lived on the streets, but I've known loss, grief, and loneliness that money couldn't erase. You think wealth shields me from pain? It doesn't. It just hides it behind polished walls." Her words pierced through his defenses. He wanted to argue, but instead he found himself remembering nights curled under thin blankets, remembering how invisible he had felt to the world. And yet, here she was, seeing him, truly seeing him. David rubbed his face with his hands. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to start over." Evelyn reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "You were strong enough to help a stranger in the middle of a storm when you had nothing. Don't tell me you're not strong enough to rebuild with something." David's throat tightened. He looked at her, at the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself imagine something different. Clean clothes, steady work, a roof over his head. A chance to live, not just survive. Tears stung his eyes, but he blinked them back. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he nodded. All right. I'll try. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'll try. Evelyn smiled, a smile that carried relief, warmth, and promise. That's all I ask. The fire cracked louder, as if sealing the moment. David didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing. Last night he had saved her life in a storm, and today she was saving his. Months passed, and winter melted into spring. The city that once felt like a prison of cold concrete now unfolded into something brighter for David. True to her word, Evelyn didn't just hand him money, she gave him opportunity. With her connections, she placed him in a training program under more enterprises. At first, David was overwhelmed. Suits instead of rags, schedules instead of endless drifting, expectations instead of invisibility. But Evelyn was patient. She reminded him every step of the way that his worth wasn't measured by where he came from, but by who he chose to become. The first paycheck he held in his hands felt almost unreal. He stared at it for a long time before carefully folding it into his wallet. That night, he found a small apartment, nothing fancy but his. 4 walls, a bed, a door he could lock. Home. One evening, Evelyn visited him there. She found him painting the walls, humming quietly to himself. He wore new boots, a clean shirt, and though his hands were still rough, they carried a different energy now, confidence. "You've made this place yours," she said warmly, stepping inside. David grinned. "Yeah. It's not much, but it's mine. And that means everything." Evelyn looked at him with pride. The man she had found half frozen in a storm now stood taller, his eyes brighter, his spirit no longer crushed under the weight of despair. "You've worked hard, David," she said. "I only opened the door. You walked through it." He paused, emotion tightening his voice. "I don't know how to thank you. You didn't just change my life, you gave it back to me." Evelyn smiled, her gaze steady. "Then promise me one thing. When you see someone else lost in the storm, don't walk past them. Be the light. Just like you were for me that night." David's chest swelled, and he nodded firmly. "I promise." The two of them shared a quiet moment, the weight of their journeys hanging in the air. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside, there was only peace. For David Carter, the man once invisible, once broken, life had shifted. He had gone into the storm as a homeless stranger, and he had come out of it with hope, dignity, and a future. And it all began the night he helped a woman in need, never knowing she was a billionaire with a gift that would change his life forever. What started as one man's act of kindness on a freezing night turned into a second chance at life he never saw coming. David's story reminds us that even the smallest good deeds can open doors we never imagined. Now I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments where you're watching this story from. I love seeing how far these messages travel. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next powerful story we share here. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today.